She heard what I said about her because the DEDCOM unit was not dead at all. It was wounded, bleeding static into the Imperial Channel, carrying every private word from our freezing shelter to the bridge of the enemy flagship. And by the time I realized it, the alien warlord I had just defended with my own mouth was already standing outside the blast door. Her name was Vera of the Ninth Eclipse, High Marshal of the Arkan Dominion, Butcher of Vestigate, Breaker of Fleets. The woman whose cruisers had turned 3 human colonies into fields of blue glass. Every Terran soldier knew her silhouette. Tall, silver-skinned, black eyes ringed with gold, horn crests swept back like a crown designed by a knife. We had been told she did not negotiate, forgive, sleep, or feel anything close to mercy. Then I watched her pull human children from a burning transit tunnel, while her own officers screamed that prisoners were not worth the delay. And I learned that propaganda is lazy in both directions. We were trapped on Outpost Ravel, a mining moon so small that star maps treated it like a clerical error. The Dominion held orbit, the human fleet had retreated, and the last survivors were packed into a sublevel bunker that smelled of coolant, fear, and recycled breath. I was Corporal Ian Vale, bridge repair specialist, temporary infantry, permanent bad decision maker, and apparently the highest ranking human left alive after the command dome collapsed. Around me were 37 civilians, 11 wounded soldiers, 1 Dominion medic we had captured by accident, and a girl named Nia who kept asking if Earth had oceans bigger than the ceiling. Outside, Arkan patrols searched the ruins. Their doctrine was simple. Useful civilians became labor assets. Soldiers became examples. Infrastructure became leverage. But Vera had complicated that doctrine since landing. She had halted bombardment near the refugee tunnels, executed 2 of her own captains for firing into a hospital zone, and personally carried human survivors through chemical smoke while her honor guard looked ready to mutiny. I had seen it through a cracked security feed, and it refused to leave my head. Monsters did not do that. Conquerors sometimes did. Guilty people sometimes did, but not monsters. So when Sergeant Pell called her a silver devil and said we should kill the Dominion medic before he betrayed us, I snapped. I told him to shut up. I told him that medic had sealed Jensen's lung and stopped little Nia from bleeding out. I told him Vera was not the worst thing on this moon, that the worst thing was an empire so hungry it needed someone like her to leash it. I said she looked like a blade because she had been used as one since childhood. I said she was dangerous, yes, terrifying, yes, guilty absolutely, but not empty, not soulless, not beyond hearing. Maybe exhaustion had stripped my caution, maybe grief had made me stupid. Maybe humans cannot survive long without turning even enemies into people. But I said the final part clearly, if she ever heard me. She would probably execute me for pity. But I think there is a heart inside that armor, and I think it is lonelier than ours. That was when the cum light turned green. Every person in the bunker froze. The captured medic stared at the panel with his mouth open. Sergeant Pell went pale, and my stomach dropped through the floor plates. Green meant outbound transmission. Live Imperial Channel? My words had crossed the ruins, climbed through broken antennas, and landed in the command net of the fleet hunting us. For 5 seconds, nobody moved. Then something heavy struck the blast door from outside. Once, twice, not the battering rhythm of a breach team, but a deliberate knock. The door opened because our locks were made for miners and weather. Not royal override codes. White vapor rolled in. For Arkan guards entered first. Armor black as deep space, rifles raised, faces hidden behind mirror helms. Then Vera stepped through, taller than any of them. Cloak torn by shrapnel, silver cheek cut, one hand resting on the hilt of a curved plasma blade. People cowered, soldiers reached for empty weapons. Naya hid behind my leg, and I stood there with blood on my sleeve and my own confession still burning in the air between us. Vera looked at me for a long moment. Her translator bead glowed at her throat. "Corporal Ian Vale," she said. "You have been broadcasting on my private command frequency." I swallowed. That was not intentional, Marshal. Her black eyes shifted over the civilians. The wounded, the captured medic, then back to me. You spoke about me. Yes, I said. You called me guilty. Yes, I said again. You said I was not empty. Her voice changed slightly on that word. Not softer, exactly, but less armored. I looked at the floor, then forced myself to look up. I meant it. That should have been the end of us. Instead, Vera removed one gauntlet. The guards stiffened as if bare skin were a political event. She walked to the Dominion medic, who dropped instantly to both knees. My marshal, he said. I failed to rejoin command. You've saved enemy wounded? Vera replied. Yes, my marshal. Why? He trembled. Because the human corporal ordered me to, and because the child was dying. Vera placed her bare hand on his bowed head. By battlefield authority, your failure is recorded as honor. The medic made a sound that did not need translation. Then she turned to Nia. The girl clutched my torn uniform. Vera crouched until her face was level with hers. Are you afraid of me? Vera asked. Nia nodded. Vera looked at the bandage on the girl's arm. Good fear keeps small creatures alive, but it should not have to live in children. She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small metal crescent, an Arkan officer's ration seal. She broke it in half and placed one piece in Nia's palm. Show this to any Dominion soldier. It says you are under my protection, Nia whispered. Does that mean you will not take us away? Vera's jaw tightened. It means I will take you out of here before the moon breaks, and anyone who touches you without permission will answer to me. There are moments when a war changes without anyone signing a treaty. I expected chains after that. Interrogation at best, execution at worst. Instead, Vera ordered her guards to distribute thermal packs, medical foam, and water bulbs. She walked through the bunker like a commander inspecting a battlefield she had inherited and hated, asking names, injuries, family counts, evacuation needs. When she reached me again, she held my gaze. You said I had a heart inside my armor. Corporal, I would know why. I almost laughed. Because terror and exhaustion make poor roommates. Because you saved children when nobody could force you to. I said because your officers were angry about it. Which means it cost you something, because monsters enjoy being obeyed. And you looked sick of it. The guards behind her shifted. One even raised his rifle a fraction. Vera lifted 2 fingers and he froze. You speak dangerously, she said. Humans keep telling me that it has not helped. Her mouth moved, not a smile, but a crack in winter. My officers say humans are reckless, because your lives are short. They are wrong, I said. We are reckless, because life is short for everyone. Children, parents, strangers, enemies. So we cannot afford to spend too much time pretending pain does not count. She was silent long enough that I heard coolant drip into a broken tray. Then she said, My people conquered that habit out of themselves long ago. I said, maybe they conquered the wrong thing. The room went colder. One Arkan guard stepped forward. Marshal, this human insults the Dominion. Vera did not look away from me. No, Commander Wraith. He diagnoses it. Wraith recoiled, as if she had struck him. And I realized the bunker was no longer only a shelter. It had become a court with witnesses. Vera ordered every survivor prepared for transfer to her flagship. Sergeant Pell protested, saying no human would board an Arkan warship willingly. Vera looked at him and said, Then board unwillingly and live, or remain proudly and die when the reactor fails. Pell had no answer for that. Humans respect courage. But we are practical when the ceiling is on fire. The evacuation was chaos. Arkan soldiers forming a corridor through the ash storm. Human civilians stumbling between them with blankets over their heads. Wounded, carried on Imperial stretchers. Every instinct in me screamed, trap. Yet every corpse in the ruins reminded me that mistrust was a luxury for people with options. Vera walked at the front. Not behind shields, but in the open, letting snipers, rebels, and resentful officers see exactly where responsibility stood. When a human boy fell, she lifted him herself. The boy punched her armor before realizing who held him. I nearly apologized, but Vera only said, good force. An efficient angle, and kept walking. Halfway to the landing field, the sky turned red. Asterisk Dominion cruisers above us shifted formation. Not toward extraction, toward bombardment. Vera stopped so abruptly the whole column compressed behind her. Her wrist spat frantic Arkan voices. Council override, strategic sterilization authorized. Contamination risk, human insurgent pockets, Imperial asset preservation secondary. I did not understand every word, but I understood enough. Someone above her had decided the moon was cheaper without witnesses. Vera's face changed. Whatever softness had entered the bunker vanished, replaced by something older and colder. Wraith. She said to the guard who had wanted me silent. Identify command source. He hesitated too long. And that was the answer. Vera drew her blade. Betrayal always arrives wearing the uniform of order. Wraith fired first. His rifle blast struck Vera's shoulder and spun her into the ash. The other guards split, half loyal, half already bought by the council. Civilians screamed. Soldiers shoved children behind cargo wreckage. I grabbed a fallen Arkan pistol, discovered it had too many grips and not enough mercy, and shot Wraith in the knee because I could not find the trigger for anything more elegant. He dropped. Pell slammed into him. And the medic dragged Vera behind a broken hauler while orbital lances began charging above the clouds. We had minutes, maybe less, before everyone on that field became a lesson in Imperial efficiency. Vera tried to stand, silver blood running down her arm. My command codes are locked, she said. Council has severed my flagship. I looked at the landing field at 3 transports. 2 with Arkan pilots dead beside them, 1 human cargo shuttle half buried in slag. Then I looked at the old mining relay tower leaning over the ridge, its antenna split but not gone. Can your fleet hear a civilian emergency burst? I asked. They will jam it? Not if it comes with reactor telemetry from below the bombardment zone. Pell stared at me. You want to lie to battleships? I corrected him. I want to tell them the truth in the most inconvenient format possible. We ran for the relay because there was nothing else left to do. Pell and 2 miners covering us, the Arkan medic holding pressure on Vera's wound. Naya and the other children loaded into transports by loyalists who no longer looked at humans like cargo. The relay ladder had melted halfway down, so I climbed the exterior struts while ash cut my face and orbital lances began burning guidelines through the clouds. Vera climbed after me, despite the wound, which was either heroic or proof that military leaders across species all shared the same disease. At the top, the control panel was fused. I tore it open, burned my palms, and patched my suit cable directly into the emergency bus. What I sent was not a surrender, not a plea, not a polished diplomatic message. It was a raw data scream. Reactor instability, civilian life signs, Dominion-friendly units in blast radius, High Marshal Vera wounded by internal mutiny. Council's sterilization order illegal under their own evacuation doctrine, plus the full audio of her promising protection to Naya. And my accidental broadcast, every word where I called her guilty, dangerous, lonely, and not empty. The signal punched upward through the jamming because mining systems are ugly. Stubborn machines designed by people who assume management will neglect maintenance for 20 years. In other words, beautifully human, the first orbital lance fired. It struck the ridge north of us and turned stone into daylight. The tower swayed. Vera caught me before I fell. I caught the cable before it snapped, and for one impossible second we hung between earth and sky. Below us, transports lifted 1, 2, then 3, packed with humans and loyal Arkan soldiers. Above us, the cruisers hesitated. Their weapons remained charged. The Council's override battled Vera's transmitted oath, algorithms fighting honor. Then the flagship moved, not away, not into firing position, but between the cruisers and the moon, its shields opened like a black sunrise, absorbing the second lance meant for us. Vera looked up, blood on her lips. My crew heard, she whispered. The flagship's guns turned on the Council cruiser. No speech could have matched that moment. No anthem, no flag, no prophecy. Just one warship, choosing a wounded commander and a handful of human. Refugees over clean instructions from distant politicians. The Council cruiser tried to flee. The flagship crippled its engines with surgical fire, Other ships wavered, then shifted behind Vera's vessel one by one. The bombardment grid collapsed on the relay tower. Vera rested her forehead against the metal and exhaled like someone who had been holding breath for years. I said, "Looks like your people still have hearts too." She answered, "Perhaps they needed a human to insult them correctly." Aboard the flagship, before surgeons could drag her away, Vera ordered a fleet-wide broadcast. Her first officer warned that the council would call it sedition, Vera said, then transmit clearly. The broadcast opened across hundreds of ships and billions of screens. Vera did not hide her wound, did not polish her voice, did not call herself innocent. She played my bunker words first. Then she played the council's sterilization order. Then she lifted Nia's broken ration seal. This human child was under my protection. She said the council ordered her death. This human corporal called me guilty and still believed I could choose better. The council called that contamination. I call it evidence that the Dominion has forgotten what honor sounds like when spoken by someone without fear of our titles. I will not cleanse humanity from our border. I will not murder witnesses to protect the comfort of cowards. I will not obey a council that fears mercy, because mercy reveals them as weak. Then she did the thing no one expected. Vera stepped down from the command dais, crossed the bridge, and stopped before Nia. The child looked terrified, but she did not run. Vera took off the black war crest from her brow, the symbol every Archon officer bowed to, and placed it in the girl's small hands. "I made you afraid," Vera said. "I cannot undo that. I can only decide what my power does next, until the last evacuee from Ravel is safe. This fleet belongs to that promise." Nia stared at the crest, then looked at me as if asking whether she had accidentally become Queen of Aliens. I had no useful answer. Across the fleet, Archon crews began kneeling. Not all, not instantly, but enough. Captains, medics, engineers, soldiers who had carried too many orders in silence. They knelt not to a child, not exactly, and not even to Vera. They knelt to the promise made visible in a child's trembling hands. Human networks picked up the broadcast minutes later, and Earth saw the same thing. The dreaded High Marshal surrendering her symbol of war to a refugee, because a human had spoken of her as if she could still choose. The council panicked, declared Vera deposed, and ordered loyalists to seize the fleet. But too many crews had already heard the child's name and chosen the promise. The war did not end. It sharpened weeks later. The first ceasefire was signed aboard the same flagship. The treaty was ugly, temporary, full of clauses both sides hated, which meant it had a chance of being real. Ravel survivors were returned. Dominion officers were tried. Human prisoners were exchanged, and the council fractured under the weight of its own recordings. Vera remained guilty of many things. She never pretended otherwise. Humans did not suddenly love her. Archons did not suddenly understand us, but the border quieted. Relief ships crossed under mixed escort, and in schoolrooms on Earth and Archon academies alike, students watched the bunker transmission that should have killed us all. They heard what I said about her. They heard a human refuse to flatten an enemy into a monster. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because truth is stronger when it refuses laziness. They saw what she did instead of anger. She saved the people who feared her, turned her fleet against her own corrupt rulers, laid down her war crest before a child, and let a promise become heavier than pride. Historians still argue whether the war turned because of strategy, politics, exhaustion, or one accidental broadcast. Soldiers know the answer is simpler and stranger. Sometimes a battlefield changes because someone says the dangerous, honest thing, and someone powerful hears it at the exact moment they are tired of being what the world expects. Years after Ravel, when Vera visited Earth under truce banners, she stood beside the ocean with Nia, now taller, braver, still carrying half of that broken ration seal on a chain. Vera asked me if humans always turned pain into stories. I told her only the pain that does not kill us fast enough. She watched the waves for a long time, then said, "You once said my heart was lonely. Was that also a diagnosis?" I said, "No, Marshal, that was an invitation." She looked at the horizon, where human and Archon ships moved together under one bruised sunset. Then she did what no warlord in any briefing packet had ever been expected to do. She bowed her head, not to Earth, not to me, but to the memory of everyone lost before we learned to speak across the fire. And in that silence, I understood the most human truth of the galaxy. We are not great because we are pure. We are great because even after terror, betrayal, and blood, some stubborn fool among us will still look at an enemy and say, "I think there is a heart in there." And sometimes, against every law of war, the enemy hears us and chooses to prove us right.